Hi, I'm Brittany Boyer.
And I'm Amanda Whitaker.
And we're at Sun Devil Stadium talking today about ASU's upcoming game against Colorado. Amanda, how do you feel about the Sun Devils this week leading into this game?
Well, Colorado is currently 5-4 after their past win against Cal. And, we did see ASU's defense struggle defensively a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be anything to worry about because they have been pretty consistent over the past few weeks. We do know that they have a strong defense, but the main key to look for going into this weekend's game is going to be Lindsey, Colorado's running back, and even head coach Todd Graham said that this conference has a lot of good running backs with Lindsey from Colorado, USC's, and Stanford's Bryce Love, who ran all over the Sun Devils when they went up north to play them.
It really was. It's going to be big for them to stop them offensively because Todd Graham even said that Colorado still has just as strong of an offense as they did last year, although they did lose 7 key defensive players. Now, Manny Wilkins talked today in the press conference about how they did get 4 JUCO players that came in to fill some of those voids, but they're not underestimating them at all. They still are expecting them to come out, play hard, and give them a run for their money. So it will be interesting to see what they can do this weekend against Colorado. They are playing at home. It is their salute to service game, so they will be wearing their specialized jerseys, their camo this year, right? Normally they do the Pat Tillman 42 for their salute to service game, but this year they switched it up a little bit. So, I think the specialized jerseys gets the players a little excited, but
it does. And they were also excited in last week's game against USC too because it was their homecoming game. Everyone was excited about the crowd being wild and really cheering on this team, which is one of the great things about playing here at Sun Devil Stadium. But there's always the home team advantage that you keep in the back of your head. Unfortunately for the Sun Devils, they had 10 penalties against them, which didn't look like an advantage at all in that game. And you brought up a great point, Brittany, about the referee in that game. And what was that? Can you tell us a little bit about that ref?
So ASU had 10 penalties in that game for 99 yards, which is the most that ASU's had since Todd Graham has been here. He's had 3 games where they've had 9 penalties or more, but this was by far the worst. And in all 3 games where ASU has had 9 or more penalties, they have had the same referee. His name is Land Clark, which I think is odd. I don't know if it's a thing with him, but he is known to make some controversial calls, not just for the Sun Devils, but for other teams as well.
He certainly did make some controversial calls. One of ASU's players was disqualified before the half for targeting.
Jasmine Tupuotazi, yes.
Yeah, and head coach Graham said that they've only been accused of targeting twice since 2015. So
the other
it's
one
not
was
a common
Armand
thing for this team.
Armand Perry, yeah, he was ejected last year in the game against Arizona. So, they're really disciplined on making sure that they don't target other players.
It definitely raises some questions whether they were targeting the Sun Devils on Saturday. They have been ranked number 1 for fewest penalties per game.
Yeah.
And their defense has been a force to be reckoned with in the past few weeks. So were they paying closer attention or were they just out to get them on Saturday?
Yeah, there definitely were some questions surrounding the officiating, but Land Clark was also the official when ASU played Oregon in 2014 in that triple overtime loss where there was the controversial touchdown catch that got reviewed and they did rule it a touchdown even though his foot was in fact out. He was also the official in the 2013 Pac-12 championship game. So he's been around, but I don't really like him as a referee for the Sun Devils.
I think a lot of people would agree after Saturday, but Coach was saying that they can't really take a side on whether they agree with the decisions or not. But the biggest thing
I will.
You might.
I don't necessarily agree with it.
They did say that this was uncharacteristic of the team and that they just need to coach their players better.
That is true. But like I said, Land Clark is known not just for. It's not like he only did this to the Sun Devils. He also didn't do. He also has done this to other teams in the Pac-12.
Right.
Before this, he was a Mountain West referee. So it raises the question as to, are there standards that the referees have to follow? Who's enforcing rules for bad calls, or can they just make whatever calls and it doesn't matter? There's no repercussions for any terrible calls that they may make.
And let's talk about that Hail Mary right before the half.
Oh, that was big.
And how that put a 25-minute delay on the game. let's talk about that, because I know they spoke a little bit about it
crazy.
in the press conference.
For anyone who may have missed the ASU-USC game this past weekend, Manny Wilkins threw a Hail Mary right before the half. Kyle Williams caught it. It actually was meant for N'Keal Harry, but Kyle Williams came down with it, and they didn't rule it a touchdown at first, but Kyle went to the team, said, no, I think I was in the end zone. They were talking about it. They decided to challenge the call, and it did get reviewed. All of USC was already in the locker room.
ASU.
Almost all of the Sun Devils were in the locker room as well, and they had to come back out of the field, line up, and kick the extra point.
Manny said it was the first time he's ever thrown a touchdown while he was in the locker room. So
it was also his first Hail Mary he's ever thrown for a touchdown.
too.
So that's also a big play for this weekend. The Sun Devils did not play their best. Their defense was slightly sloppy, but
it regressed.
It did regress. But Todd Graham talked about how November is for champions, and so this is the time that they need to win. So maybe this loss the past weekend for the Sun Devils was good to get out of the way.
Everybody's been saying that they've gotten past the toughest hump in their schedule so far. I mean, they had to play Oregon, Washington, USC, all ranked teams.
Mm-hmm.
But after Saturday's loss, I mean, it might raise a few questions as to whether this next month is going to be difficult for them as well.
I think
and
that
also
loss,
too, with Arizona as the final game of the season and Khalil Tate looking like a Heisman contender, that could be a tricky game as well.
Well, here's the thing. I think ASU needed to get the loss out of the way for them mentally. I think it brought them back down. They were riding high after 2 huge wins. And I mean, even the win over Oregon, it was a while back, but I think it pumped them up. I think the loss against USC over the weekend brought them back down, refocus on where they need to be, leading into Colorado, leading into UCLA, leading into Oregon State, and then the final game against Arizona. And, Arizona's Khalil Tate really is one of their only targets. I'm not going to say Arizona's not a good team. They are.
Clearly, they're a good team.
They're a good team.
Look at their record. They're 6-2.
Mm-hmm.
Right behind
they're 6-2,
USC.
and they're playing USC this weekend.
And they're ranked now.
They are ranked. They're ranked 23. But I think if Arizona State's defense can stop Khalil Tate and shut them down, that's going to be the end of it. Because before Khalil Tate was playing in the game, they were narrowly squeezing by. And
I mean, look at Washington's quarterback. He was leading the Pac-12 for passing yards at the time, and they sacked him 5 times.
Arizona
if they can do that
defense
to
just
Tate,
shut them down.
Then
Then
could see another win on their
They're
hands.
going to struggle, because look at how Arizona performed before he was put in the game. They were struggling. I mean, let's just be honest. They were struggling. Their level of performance on the field has increased dramatically. He is great. He's done great things for them. But the key is going to be stopping him. Because if they stop him, they have nobody. And I think their biggest test so far for their season, Washington State was a great test, but USC really is going to be who's going to give them a run for their money.
And Brittany, I'd like to get your take on this. Kind of one of the questions that's been ongoing through this season has been consistency with this team. And Coach Graham brought it up in the press conference today about being consistent. We saw the defense kind of fall a little bit off the tracks this past Saturday, but do you think that's going to be a common thing going forward in the next 4 weeks, or do you think this defense is going to continue to stay consistent and stay on their A game?
You know what? I think the defense is going to continue to stay consistent and stay on their A game. You can't always go out and have a perfect game. You have to look at how much Phil Bennett has been able to do for the defense in his short amount of time he's been here. We talked about this last week. They have improved by leaps and bounds. And you're still going to have issues. You're going to have to adjust every game. No game's the same. You can't replicate things.
Right.
But I think that they're going to continue to come out, continue to do their best on defense. And, I mean, if they have another game where they don't necessarily perform the best, then they do. But you can just see how much they've improved, even from the beginning of the year.
And not only has Phil Bennett been able to really adapt to this team, but we also have that power duo with DJ Calhoun and Christian Sam teaming up on a ton of guys, and Calhoun not missing a single tackle. I mean, there's a lot of consistency with just them two alone.
Those guys are leaders for the team, definitely. But you also have to look at Tashawn Smallwood. I think Tashawn Smallwood and the 3 penalties he had against him was a big momentum change for them against USC over the weekend. Tashawn Smallwood is also a senior. He's been on the team for 4 years. He was a part of that team that beat USC with the Hail Mary. He's a big difference maker. They look to him as a leader. So, if he's a part of them that's performing well, it's gonna show. It's gonna carry over.
And I'm glad you brought up Smallwood, because this past game against USC was a big one for both him and Calhoun, because they were both supposed to go to USC.
They were.
So this was a big game for them.
Yeah, they had talked last week about how there was some bad blood between them and USC because they were supposed to go there. Coaching changes happened, and then they both decommitted and decided to come to Arizona State. So for them, they did only beat USC once in their time here, but I know that they had talked about how there was some tension between themselves and the Trojans, but
yeah, I know they're really looking forward to Saturday's game specifically because of that, but I'd love to get their take on it now that the game's over, and they're both seniors, so it was their last year playing against them.
It was, but I think that they're going to take the momentum from the loss. They're going to apply it to finish out November strong. And Todd Graham talked to his team about them being champions. He's talked to them about the importance of winning November, and if they win November, they have a shot. They really do. Yeah. So it will be important. Manny even said today that in practice they came out and
it was a good Tuesday.
It was a great Tuesday. He said a normal team would come out and have a mediocre or a not so good practice after what happened to them Saturday. He said their practice was better than normal. Like, it was one of the best Tuesday practices.
I believe that Manny said that because after some previous losses, like after Stanford, they came to practice and they practiced hard, but then they came into the press conference and there was not a good attitude and everyone was kind of down. But today, both him and Kyle Williams and Coach Graham, everyone said that it was a good day. So I think that is the right attitude that they need to have moving forward into this weekend's game.
There was a lot of positivity in the room. And you know, the other thing, even though they lost, there still are some of those fans that are calling for Todd Graham's head. Now, I don't know if you agree with me on this or not. I see you giggling. It is kind of absurd, but think about it. ASU was supposed to go 0-5 between Oregon, Stanford, Washington, Utah, and USC. ASU was not supposed to win any of those 5 games. To go 3-2 in those games,
started from the bottom. Now
to go 3-2 is great. That is above average. That is more than what anybody could have expected from them. So for people calling for Todd Graham's head, I don't get it. You still have the chance to either finish the season 8-4 if they win out November, or realistically 7-5 if they lose one more game, which is better than they've been in the past couple years.
I think at this point in the season and seeing the accomplishments that this team has made, that discussion shouldn't even be able to.
It needs to be shut down. Todd Graham needs to stay. He's done a great job turning the team around.
I don't think he's going anywhere.
So have his assistant coaches, but you still have some of those crazy Sun Devil fans who think Todd Graham needs to go. That's my 2 cents. 3-2, we're supposed to be 0-5. Take that into consideration. Think about it for a minute, and before you say Todd Graham needs to be fired next time,
just look at the progression of this team, where they started, how the coaching staff has changed and had to adapt to this team, and this defense really has solidified itself and made a name for themselves. So
they definitely have. So it will be exciting to watch Arizona State play Colorado at home in Sun Devil Stadium this weekend. Kickoff is at 6. It's earlier this week, so make sure you watch it. It's going to be the salute to service game. They're going to be wearing their camo jerseys, all decked out.
That's right. They're awesome. If you haven't seen them, make sure you at least tune into the game and get a good look at them because they're pretty sick.
So that's all we have for you. I'm Brittany Boyer.
And I'm Amanda Whitaker.
Coming to you from Sun Devil Stadium in Tempe.
Cronkite News.